Welcome to another parent-teacher video lesson from the earlygiftedmanual.com, a free website for homeschooled children 3 to 7 years old and their parents that promotes and develops giftedness at an early age. I am Gary Blank, the creator of that site, and your host and facilitator for this video and all of the videos in my educational program. As the video lessons are designed to work in conjunction with the program on my website, I ask you to, at some point, click on the URL link in the description box below, and this action will take you to the earlygiftedmanual.com. By doing that, you will be able to put this lesson and all of the video lessons here on my channel in the proper context of the total program that I am presenting to you and your child. So let's continue to reinforce how fractions work, this idea of fractions. And here's a really good one. And it actually serves several purposes, but we'll get into that in a minute. Of course, this is just a regular sheet of copy paper. And you could tell your child, look, I can take this piece of copy paper and I can fold it into halves, then into fourths, then into eighths, and on and on and on. And you can show him or her how to do that. And the trick is you line up the edges, which of course will be challenging for your young child. He or she may need a little help with that. You want to line up the edges nice and neat. There you go. And then hold the edges down as you smooth out the fold, and then tell them they need to press really hard on this fold. They want it to be what we call crisp, and they may understand that, but you want it to be a good fold that you can see. So you can unfold the paper and say, look, I folded the paper into halves, 2 equal parts of the whole, 1/2, 1/2. And then you could say, I could keep going. I'm going to fold it once again. Let's line up those edges, very important. Hold down and really press hard. Tell your child, really press hard. And of course, the two of you should be doing this together. And now you say, look, I can unfold the piece of paper, and now you can clearly see fourths. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 equal sized areas, and each one is 1/4 of the whole. So obviously this is a very great visual way of showing your child how fractions work, and you can take it as far as you want. I might go as far as maybe eighths at this point, and I'll do it for you here. Of course, it gets more difficult to get nice crisp lines. Unfold the paper, and there you have it. 8 equal pieces of the whole. Each one is 1/8. So great manipulative, very inexpensive, obviously, that you can show your child to reinforce this idea of fractions. So let me get this out of the way. Now I'm going to bring what we looked at when I was talking about materials. These are the fraction circles, and as you know, there are fraction squares. I'm going to work with the circles because the circles seem to be more recognizable to kids. Pizzas, pieces of pizzas, pieces of pie. So I would recommend starting with the circles, and then of course there's a whole set of squares and fractions of squares that you can work with. So how do you work with these? Well, I would say there's no really set lesson. I would let your child kind of mess around with them for a while, as I like to say, and they may discover a lot of things on their own. And if not, you can kind of hang around and tell them, well, look, here's what we have here. This is a whole circle. And then look at this. This circle has been divided into halves, and you could put 1/2 on the other to show them, yes, they are equal. Each one is 1/2 of the whole, and so on. Thirds, fourths, this is sixth, and this is eighths. And really, the best, what these are really good for is what I call showing equivalencies. So you can start maneuvering these things around. Like you could say, you could do this, for example. You could take this half away, bring up these quarters, or your child may have figured this out on their own, and then you could say, well, look, 2 quarters, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. And you can prove it, of course, by putting these two right on top of this one. And that's really powerful stuff because fractions are all about equivalencies. And of course, you know, as adults we know about the least common denominator, and of course 2/4 is 1/2, but that's something they don't really need to know yet. That's clouding up the picture. But they do need to know that at this point that those can be equal. And of course, we could do that in a variety of ways. Let's say here we have 1/4, and you could say, well, look, I'm going to take 2/8, and look at that, it's the same as 1/4. And on. You could keep mixing up these different these different fractions of circles, and it's really powerful stuff because it's a way your child can really get a hands-on way of seeing how all these fractions and equivalencies go together, and he or she may even find other ways to work with this that I haven't thought of yet, and that's of course is a good thing. But that is mainly how you would work with the fraction circle, and of course there's the fraction square. Okay, let's move these off. And now another manipulative, pattern blocks. I love pattern blocks, but I'm not going to get into it, talk about it too heavily now. They're a great manipulative, but they're also great for illustrating fractions. And I'll show you why. First of all, you need to review with your child, what is this shape? Hopefully she will say, well, that's a hexagon, right? This one's a little harder. Trapezoid. I'm going to put those two together. And of course, rhombuses. Like I said, I hope that word's not rhombi, or I'm going to get mail from you guys. There are the rhombuses, or diamonds, she wants to call them that. And finally, as I'm sure your child knows, these are triangles. Oops, let's try that again. Okay, so immediately they should be able to see, well, look, even these ones here, when you put them all together like this, they have the same shape as the hexagon. So there are equivalencies. And the equivalencies are 2 trapezoids equals a hexagon, and you could prove it to them by doing that. 3 diamonds equals a hexagon, and there you've proven it. And finally, 6 triangles equals a hexagon. And if I can actually get these triangles on here. All right, there we go. And you've proven it by putting one right on top of the other. And of course, those aren't the only equivalencies here. You could take this trapezoid and say, well, look at this. 1, 2, 3 triangles can equal a trapezoid. Or you might want to go in this direction. 2 triangles is the same as a diamond. There you go. Or 3 diamonds equals a hexagon. So once again, by working with these, you can show your child, yes, there are equivalencies, and really that's a big part of what fractions are all about. So this is a great basis for getting your child started in their study of fractions. And of course they will move on to bigger and better things from here. And finally, let's look at what we call Geo Boards. One side has a grid of knobs. Let's see, you can see it, there it is, that are protruding, and this one is a circular. And let's start out with this one first. And this is a very informal activity. I'm going to take, well, let's get the rubber bands out here. I'm just going to take this rubber band and make a big square, and you can just show your child, or maybe they can show you, that this square can be divided up. And of course we have halves there. Now we've divided it up into quarters, and we could go to eighths and sixteenths. And then, it's really good to show them that your child that, well, that's not the only way we can divide up this square. Watch this. You can divide it into 4 equal triangles. And so now we've come into a different realm, that the fractions do not always have to be rectangles or squares. So there's an example. Let's see what else. Or you could divide it into fourths this way. There's more than one way to divide this square into fourths. So you get the idea. Let your child experiment some with that. And you can go over to the circle. And of course, we're essentially doing the same thing with a different shape. Let's use a green one this time. Okay, I've just divided the circle into half. There's one half. There's another half, 2 equal parts. And there, of course, you have quarters. And, of course, you can keep going on and on. Eighths, and so forth. But, we will do a whole lesson on Geo Boards, but right now we're talking about fractions. And tell your child, don't let this little space in here throw you. We're looking at a very broad picture here. Obviously, we can't get these exactly together. So, Geo Boards, a great way to once again reinforce this whole idea of the concept of fractions. And finally, here is an interesting thing you can do with your child to once again further this idea of fractions. And I would have to say this is for the advanced child. In other words, a child who is just breezing through these fraction lessons you're doing with her, and this is a little more interesting and a little more challenging. So, ruler, pencil, and this is I've trimmed down a sheet of copy paper to 8 by 8, just because I think, as you'll see in a minute, it makes things a little easier. The rectangles we get aren't too elongated. So I'm going to start out by dividing this square 8 by 8 piece of paper into 2 equal pieces. And you may have already begun working with measurement with your child, and in that case you could turn it into a measurement lesson, and you two can work together to make these ticks and these lines, which I'm about to show you. If not, you can just tell your child this is called a ruler, and it makes it very easy for you to divide the paper up into equal sections, and that'll have to do for now. So I've already made a couple ticks here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of 8 by 8 paper, and as you can see, I've divided it in half, 2 equal pieces. Each side is 1/2 of the total. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half and divide it in half. So you may already be able to see where we're going with this. All right. Make your ticks. Draw a line across. And so now you can tell your child, well, look, there's a half, and this is a half that I've divided into a half. So one of these squares is 1/4 of the total. And hopefully your child will be following you with that. And if he or she is, you can keep going and say, okay, now I'm going to take this 1/4 and divide it into halves. And there we go. A couple of ticks, a line of cross, and then you can tell your child, okay, now this piece here, and of course this piece too, is 1/8 of the total of this of area, I should say, of this this square piece of paper. In other words, if you continue to draw lines, you could get 8 shapes like that on this piece of paper. And then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to take this 1/8 and divide it in half. And I'm sure by now you, the parent teacher, can see where this is going. All right. So there we go. And since you, the parent, can clearly see where this is going, I'm just going to say, okay, now we have each of these, and of course we'll focus on this one in particular, is 1/16 of the total. In other words, if we drew out the lines, we could get 16 squares like this. Okay, and maybe let's take it one or two more, just for the fun of it. I'm going to take this 1/16 of the page and divide it in half. All right. And there it is. And without going into the big explanation I just went into, now we have 1/32. These represent this one represents 1/32. Of course, this one does too. And maybe let's take it to one more place here. And finally, we have this, which is 1/64. In other words, if we were to divide up all the paper, we would have 64 squares, shapes, whatever you want to call them, like this. So it's an interesting thing to do with your child, because if your child is especially bright, he or she might say, well, pretty soon it's going to get so tiny we can't work with it. And there you go. Your child is already looking into the concept of, is the word infinitesimally? I don't know, but infinitely small, something that's infinitely small. But really, to seal the deal here, you can do this to illustrate to your child just what you've done here. Okay, we know that this is 1/2 of the total paper. This is 1/4. This one here is 1/8. This one here is 1/16. This one here is 1/32. And finally, both of these are 1/64. So it's a really cool way to show your child how when you continually divide things into half, the denominator changes. And what it does, and this is a concept that your child should probably be ready for, is the denominator doubles, goes from 2, 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64. So a really fun thing you could do with your child if they're ready for it, if he or she is ready for it, and they'll get a big kick out of this, and they'll probably say, okay, let's keep going. Let's divide this one up and this one, and you can get a good laugh out of it and see how far you can go before your writing is so tiny that it's impossible to do. But anyway, a fun thing to do if your child is breezing through fractions and is an advanced in this area.